Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be talking about must-add players. I know the title says top 10, but we do have 15 guys on this list. I think a lot of them are super underrated, definitely under-rostered, and they have a lot of potential, so let's get right into it. The first player on this list is Rasmus Sandin of the Toronto Maple Leafs. We just found out yesterday that Morgan Rielly was placed on long-term IR, which means he is going to miss a minimum of 10 games. Reports are suggesting that he is going to be out around 4 to 6 weeks, and that Sandin is going to take over that first line power play spot. Obviously a lot of potential being on that first line power play with Matthews and Marner. He is a short-term option because Rielly will not require surgery, but for the next month or two, he will be a great addition to your team. The next player on this list is Nashville Predators rookie Juuso Parssinen. He was completely unknown going into the season pretty much, but he got called up by the Predators about 2 weeks ago, and he scored his first NHL goal in his first NHL game. It is really looking promising with Juuso Parssinen. He was a 7th round pick in 2019, and now he is on that top line with Filip Forsberg and Mikko Granlund, so there is a lot of potential there. If you look at his AHL stats, they were pretty solid, which is why I'm assuming he was called up. Nashville was looking for some offensive firepower, and Parssinen has definitely provided it for them, posting 5 points in 5 games, also a total of 3 goals. I can't really speak on his deployment for the rest of the season, but he is playing 16 minutes a game right now on that first line and on that first line power play unit. So he is definitely a must-add in my eyes, especially in deeper leagues. If your league counts hits, he definitely puts up good numbers in that category. He's averaging around 2 to 2.5 hits per game, and the other night he had 6 hits in one game, which was pretty good. He is a big guy, 6'3", 212 pounds, and like I said about his deployment, he could definitely get moved off that top line, could get sent down to the AHL, who knows, but he is a great short-term add and even a potential long-term add for those deeper leagues like I said, so add him while you can because I'm sure his roster is going to go way up. The next player on this list is Adam Ruzicka of the Calgary Flames. A lot of people like to hate on that 2017 draft, but we've seen this year that draft is much deeper than we thought. Ruzicka being one of these guys that was drafted that year in the 4th round, and now he is playing top line minutes with Lindholm and Toffoli. This is technically his 3rd year in the league, but he's only played a total of 33 NHL games, spending most of his career in the AHL. He had really good stats in the AHL last season with 11 goals and a total of 20 points in 16 games. This year, he was a healthy scratch for a majority of the season until Huberdeau went down with an injury and Calgary called him up, and he has not let this opportunity go to waste. He's a point per game player right now with 8 points in 8 games, also a total of 4 goals. He had a monster night on Saturday against the Panthers on that top line where he posted 2 goals and 1 assist, and I think it's safe to say that Ruzicka should be a full-time NHL player at this point. He is looking really good out there. Obviously his deployment might change, he might not stay in that top 6, but I do believe that he will stay with the Flames for the rest of the season. They do need help offensively, and Ruzicka could provide that spark. With that being said, I think he is definitely a must-add in 14 team plus leagues, but probably a good stream for more shallow leagues. We'll see how it goes for the rest of the season, but I think there's a lot of potential there, so add him while you can. I do want to add that Ruzicka currently only has center eligibility on Yahoo, but he is playing wing on that top line, so keep an eye out for that. If they do change it to dual position eligibility, that definitely is a huge advantage to have. The next player on this list is Owen Tippett of the Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers traded for him back in March, a part of that Claude Giroux trade, and it looks like this year might be a breakout year for him. The Flyers have been shuffling lines a lot with their injuries, but he is getting top 6 minutes, averaging 17 minutes per game. He is currently playing on the first line and the first line power play unit. I don't know exactly how Torts is going to shuffle the lines when Konechny comes back, but Tippett should still be in that top 6 because he is playing like a top 6 player. He has 10 points in 14 games, also a total of 6 goals, and his shooting percentage is actually quite sustainable. It's at 15%, which is a little bit high for him, but I can see him sustaining this production for the rest of the year. In deeper leagues, this could be a long-term hold if he continues up this production. I think in more shallow leagues, he is a really good stream. If you don't know exactly what to do with your team and you need to add a forward, definitely look at Owen Tippett because he could provide a lot of value for the rest of the season, but definitely keep an eye on him and see if this is truly a breakout year. The next player on this list is Ryan O'Reilly of the St. Louis Blues. I know the stats look bad right now if you're looking at the screen. 8 points in 18 games isn't very good, but I attribute this to the Blues going on an 8-game losing streak. They just finished that losing streak and now they've gone on a 7-game winning streak, so I expect Ryan O'Reilly to start playing a little bit better. In his first 10 games, he only recorded 1 point, but in his last 8 games, he has 7 points, so he's definitely picking it back up. He is a guy that plays top 6 on the Blues, and he is on that second power power play unit, which usually splits time with the first power play unit, so that is solid. I do have better Blues players on this list that I'm going to discuss a little bit later, but Ryan O'Reilly is still a solid add. He had 58 points in 78 games last year, and if you're in a league with 12 teams or more, he is absolutely a must add. I do think that center is a deep position, so it depends on who you have in your team, but if you're looking for a center, pick him up. The next player on this list is Andrei Kuzmenko of the Vancouver Canucks. Signing with the Canucks in the offseason from the KHL, I was really high on him going into the season, and he's been pretty solid with 15 points in 18 games and a total of 8 goals. With that being said, there definitely has been some growing pains with Kuzmenko. He's not on the first line power play, his minutes have been all over the place, and he got healthy scratched the other night, which I definitely disagreed with. However, I think Kuzmenko has massive potential, especially when looking at his KHL stats. He had 20 goals in a total of 53 points in 45 games last season, and the reason I'm so high on Kuzmenko is that I like to compare him to Artemi Panarin. Panarin had a similar stat line in the KHL the year before he went to the NHL, and in Panarin's first season, he put up 77 points. Panarin had a slightly better stat line and was younger than Kuzmenko his last year in the KHL, but I still think this is super promising. Kuzmenko is only going to get better as the season progresses. I know the Canucks are a dumpster fire, but his stats have been really good despite all of this. He has a lot of chemistry with Elias Pettersson, and hopefully Kuzmenko could find a way to get on that first line power play. I think this is one of the best adds on this list because he is only 25% rostered. He will score 60 to 70 points in my opinion, and you need to add him before it's too late. I know that Brayden Schenn is probably not available in most of your leagues. He is 70% rostered on Yahoo, but he was dropped in my 10-team league, and I think he's criminally underrated every season. Even though the Blues have been struggling, he still managed to put up 16 points in 18 games. He also has 5 goals of those 16 points, but last year he was also really good. He was almost a point per game player with 58 points in 62 games. I just think in any league that has 10 teams or more, he should not be on the waiver wire. In an 82-game season, he is likely going to put up 60 to 70 points, and he has that dual eligibility of center and left wing, which I think is super valuable. If he is on your waiver wire in a 10-team league or more, definitely pick him up because he has a lot of value. The next player on this list is defenseman Noah Hanifin of the Calgary Flames. He struggled really bad early on, as did a lot of Calgary players, going pointless in his first 8 games, but in his last 9 games, he has 7 points to go along with 1 goal. Now, he doesn't get first line power play time, which I don't love with defensemen, but he is on that first pairing with Rasmus Andersson. I do think that Calgary players are expected to get a little bit of regression because last season was so amazing, but he had a really good year last year with 48 points in 81 games, also 10 goals. So he has shown that he is a serviceable defenseman who is going to put up fantasy points. If your league values peripherals, he puts up really good numbers in that department. He puts up a lot of shots and blocks, and with Calgary picking it back up, I think that Hanifin is a must add, especially if you're looking for a defenseman. I think a lot of people dropped him early on when he was struggling. He's only 54% rostered, and honestly, any league with 10 teams or more, he should not be on the waiver wire. Pick him up before he starts streaking even more, because 7 points in 9 games is really good, and people are going to start noticing him. Next player on this list is Boone Jenner of the Columbus Blue Jackets, and he has been playing out of his mind as of late. He has 7 goals in his last 8 games. He struggled early on in the season, but it brings his season total to 14 points in 18 games, which is really solid. Obviously, Columbus is struggling right now, but I think Boone Jenner is still a really solid pickup. Last year was actually his best season in terms of point per game, and his deployment is amazing, being on that first line with Johnny Gaudreau and that first line power play. He had 23 goals in 59 games last year, putting him on pace for a total of 31 goals if you played a full healthy season. If your league values peripherals, he also puts up really good numbers in that department with a solid amount of shots and hits. He does only have center eligibility, and that is a bloated position this year on Yahoo, but I do think that Boone Jenner is a very solid pickup and shouldn't be on the waiver wire in any leagues with 10 teams or more. He's only 47% rostered, and that is only going to continue to go up as he continues his play. I do think he's going to put up 60 to 70 points this season, even on a bad Columbus team. The next player on this list is Filip Hronek of the Detroit Red Wings, and he has been on absolute fire right now with 14 points in 18 games and also 4 goals. Last year, he had 38 points in 78 games, which is solid, but he had 5 goals in these 78 games compared to 4 goals this year in 18 games. So clearly he is playing amazing, and he might be breaking out. Now, I will say that his shooting percentage right now at 10% is unsustainable. He is due for regression, and that will come. Another thing to add about Hronek is that he was seeing first-line power play time for a majority of the season, and he did pretty good with 5 power play points in 18 games, compared to last year where he only had 7 power play points in 78 games. But it seems like they are going back to Sider now, which means that Hronek's point totals will go down. Now, despite all that negative stuff, I still think Hronek is a great add, especially if you are looking for a defenseman. He did have 38 points last year, like I said. He is a young player, he puts up great peripherals, and who knows, maybe he could get put back on that first-line power play. I doubt it, but he should still be a very serviceable defenseman moving forward. Hopefully he can keep this hot streak going, and he could be a good long-term hold. In any leagues with 10 teams or more, I do think he should be rostered, and the Red Wings only played 2 games this week, so maybe people held off on adding him. If you feel like you can waste an ad for this week, definitely do it, because he could be good for the rest of the season and put up 40 to 50 points. How often are you going to find a guy that was over a point per game player last year and is only 57% rostered? Well, look no further than Robert Thomas of the St. Louis Blues. He currently has 16 points in 18 games, and he is a really good player. He was only 22 years old when he put up that point total last year with the Blues, so there is a lot of potential there for Robert Thomas. He has amazing hockey IQ. His deployment is great, being on that first line and that first line power play. I know that center is a bloated position, like I've said before. I know he doesn't put up too many goals. His peripherals aren't that great, but any player that is going to put up 80 points or more should be rostered in leagues with 10 teams or more. The Blues struggled early on, which definitely affected his point total, and in this winning streak that they currently have going on, Thomas has played super well. I do expect him to be over a point per game player again this year, so add him before it's too late, because he is super consistent and super good. The next player on this list is David Perron of the Detroit Red Wings, and I know he is 61% rostered, so he's probably not available in a lot of your leagues, but in my 10-team league, he is available, and I think he should absolutely be rostered. On the Blues last year, he put up 27 goals and a total of 57 points in 67 games, so he was on pace for being a 30-goal scorer. I know the Blues are a better team than the Red Wings, but the Red Wings do have a lot of offensive weapons, and Perron is one of them. Early on, he did struggle, but he is playing really well as of late. He has a total of 15 points in 18 games and also 6 goals. Shooting percentage is sustainable, and I think he will be a very good long-term add in any leagues with 10 teams or more. I know that the Red Wings have shuffled the lines with some of the injuries that they've had, but I do think Perron will stay on that first line power play and will still be in that top 6. He also puts up really good peripherals if your league counts those, puts up a decent amount of shots, and puts up hits. I just think in general he's very underrated. I think he is likely going to put up 25 to 30 goals. He is a right winger as well, which is super important because that position is scarce. He should be rostered if he is on your waiver wire. Pick him up because he is going to be solid for the rest of the season. The next player on this list is goaltender Stuart Skinner of the Edmonton Oilers. I briefly talked about him in my goalies video that I posted a couple of days ago, and I do have strong opinions on this. I know a lot of people are saying Skinner is going to be the starter for the rest of the season, but I think they are going to give Campbell a lot of opportunities to bounce back. They did just sign him to a 5-year, $25 million contract, and they are not going to let that go to waste. Now, I still think Skinner has a lot of value. He just started 4 games in a row. He did play pretty bad against the Devils, but his stats are way better than Campbell's. His goals against average right now is 2.78, which is solid, but his save percentage is even better with .921. Compare this to Campbell, who has a 4.27 goals against average and a .873 save percentage. Skinner is clearly the better option right now, but I like this more as a short-term ad rather than a long-term ad. I think the Oilers are going to ride the hot hand as the season continues, so if Campbell has a couple of good games, they might give him 3-4 games in a row, and vice versa for Skinner. I could be wrong on this, but I do think Skinner's ceiling is probably 60 to 65% of starts. That is okay, but I do think Edmonton is going to be an average team for the next couple of months, especially with Evander Kane out. They could very likely be a below 500 team until like January or February. I know I'm kind of ripping on the Edmonton goalie situation, and I'm supposed to be talking about how Skinner is a must-add player, but trust me, I do think he is a must-add player because if Campbell keeps playing this bad, Skinner will be the starter, and if you need a goalie, Skinner is that guy. The next player we are talking about, who might be my favorite player on this list, is Jakob Chychrun of the Arizona Coyotes. If you are in the market for a defenseman, this is your guy. He had off-season wrist surgery, but he's finally back, and I think he has so much potential. Chychrun had a pretty disappointing season last year with only 21 points in 47 games. He did have 7 goals, which is good, but I think people were disappointed because they had super high expectations of Chychrun going into last season. This is because in 2020, he played absolutely out of his mind. He had 18 goals and a total of 41 points points in 56 games, putting him on pace for 25 plus goals if you played that full season. He was absolutely amazing, and he also put up great peripherals, puts up a ton of shots, blocks, and hits. He was probably top 3 fantasy defenseman that year. I think a big reason for his poor play last year is that he was taken off the first line power play, and Arizona Coyotes are just generally not a good team, but Chychrun has requested a trade and has been on the market for the past year. Teams have not fit the Coyotes' asking price, but this year could finally be the year that he gets traded, which would skyrocket his value. I think the biggest problem with Chychrun, which is bad for fantasy owners and has hurt the ability for the Coyotes to get the value they want out of him in a trade, is that he is an absolute band-aid. He has consistently missed 25 plus games every season of his career, and throughout just 7 seasons, these are the injuries that Chychrun has had: an ankle surgery, a shoulder ligament surgery, a concussion, 2 wrist surgeries, and surgeries on both knees. It is hard for teams to match the Coyotes' asking price of 2 first-round picks, a prospect, and potentially more when Chychrun is constantly getting injured. At 24, for him to have this many injuries, it is not a good sign looking forward. Even if Chychrun doesn't get traded and stays in the Coyotes, I still think he is a must-add player. He puts up goals, he puts up points, and puts up really good peripherals for a defenseman, which is insanely valuable. With Goss to spare not playing too well right now, there is a chance that Chychrun can find himself on the first-line power play, which would increase his value quite a bit. He's only played 1 game so far. He didn't record any points, but his peripherals were really good. And I think that in the next week or two, his percentage rostered is going to go way up. So scoop him while you can, especially if you need a defenseman. In any leagues with 10 teams or more, he needs to be rostered. The last player on this list is a guy who has been playing incredible, and that guy is Jamie Benn of the Dallas Stars. I know for most of you watching, Jamie Benn has probably been picked up already, but I was able to pick him up on Monday in a 10-team league, so he still might be on the waiver wire for some of you, especially in those more shallow leagues, those 8-team leagues and 10-team leagues. He could be a waiver wire pickup that some of you are considering to pick up for long term, and he could provide a lot of value. Last year, his season was okay, but not very good. He had 46 points in 82 games with only 18 goals, but at 33 years old, he is making a comeback. He currently has 20 points in 19 games to go along with 8 goals, and he is playing really solid. I know a lot of you probably think this is a fluke in a sell-high situation, and it could be, but I think there are a lot of good reasons as to why Jamie Benn is playing so well and why he might continue to play well. For starters, Rick Bowness is no longer the Dallas head coach, and a lot of Dallas players did not like the way that Rick Bowness ran their offense, including defenseman John Klingberg. It was very dump and chase, and I don't think this favors Benn's style of a play. The second reason is load management. If you look at Benn's average total ice time for this season, it is the lowest it has been since his first year in the NHL, and I think this is really good for Benn. It takes a lesser toll on his body throughout the season, and it allows him to put in more quality shifts. The last reason is that he has a new line mate in Mason Marchment. That line of Sagan, Marchment, and Benn is really clicking right now, and I think this could definitely help with Benn for the rest of the season. He's also on that first line power play unit with Jason Robertson, who is playing amazing, Rupe Hintz, Joe Pavelski, and Miro Heiskanen. So Benn has a lot of potential for the rest of the season. His shooting percentage right now at 20% is unsustainable, so he is due for some regression, but I think all signs point towards Benn being a long-term hold. Like I said, he is on that first line power play, and I think he's likely going to put up 60 to 70 points this season. If he is somehow still on the waiver wire in leagues that are 10 teams or more, you need to pick him up immediately. Alright guys, that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed this content, please hit that subscribe button below. As a new channel, I'm trying to get those numbers up, so I would appreciate it a ton. I hope that some of the guys that I talked about today could be viable options for your team, short term or long term. I think they have a lot of potential, and like always guys, have a good one.